How do you and Esther resolve conflict in relationships? How do you approach this? How do you manage your emotions? And what's the resolve, or how do you resolve it if you need to? It's quite loaded there. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this is definitely an area of improvement for us. It's an area that we're not the greatest at, but we try time and time again to try and resolve. We had what do they say when you're Christian? It's heated fellowship, right? Not a disagreement. And Esther's very good at, okay, I've gone away, I've calmed down a bit. Let me come back now and let's talk. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think what we're trying to understand more, from my point of view anyway, is trying to listen more to the other person rather than just saying what I feel and getting my emotions out there. And also the timing of it. So if we're heated, can we discuss this a little later? So that we don't end up saying things that we regret or saying things in the heat of the moment. So I always say to people that when you're working on conflict, you have to know your triggers. You have to ask yourself if you're approaching it from a calm place and understand how the other person likes to deal with conflict as well.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think in terms of that time, so like, can we speak about this later, needs to be communicated, because I'm the type that would be like, let's talk about this and let's sort this out. But the timing is wrong. However, if it's a case that we need to speak about it later, I think that should also be communicated, because especially in the beginning, it would just be silent treatment. There's so much that needs to be said, or, there should be like an intermission kind of part, like, let's just take a break and we can continue like it's normal, not pretending. But I think the silent treatment thing kind of fosters a lot of toxic thoughts from me personally. I can only speak for myself. But I start to make up things. I know how women can be as well. We start to make up scenarios in our heads, or, have arguments with this imaginary person. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself. Okay. So that time in between is very delicate and it's quite dangerous, or it could be quite productive. So if you communicate to your partner that actually let's take a break and resume, I think that kind of calms things down a bit. Yeah.
Do you think, so obviously you're married and you live together, couples that are, not married and so not living together, do you think there's a big difference in terms of, obviously you're not going to necessarily know the silent treatment or experience that, but is there a different way to go about it if you're courting, for example?
I think when you're courting, the conflict and how you go about conflict resolution when you're courting is going to be very much different from when you're living with someone and someone's in the same space. I mean, if we were courting, it will be a case of bye at the end of the evening and I'm not going to see you for a little while. And, whereas we're not going anywhere. We're in the same room, we're under the same roof. So I think it's different when you're courting, but I also think that when you're courting as well, you have to be a bit more intentional about how you go about resolving that conflict, whether it's, okay, let's not do this on WhatsApp because tone can be misread. Let's do this, let's meet up, let's have a phone call. I think you definitely have to be intentional, but when you're under the same roof, it's a bit more heated.
Cool. Okay, next question. How do you grow in confidence regarding intimacy? So not just sexual proximity, allowing a closeness, building that with a partner without falling into sin. I guess so, yeah. Judging by this, it looks like they may be in a courting stage, and I guess growing in intimacy, probably is the overall theme.
I don't understand how do you grow in confidence when it comes to intimacy, not just sexual proximity, allowing closeness, building that with a partner without falling into sin.
Sorry, I was about to. No shade. Maybe they mean not sexual. Maybe not just sexual. If they're not married, and growing in closeness. So having that intimacy that is not sexual.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Is that what it is? Yeah. I'd say like we learned in the first, I think, was it the first week of Relationship Matters, the asking questions. It can feel like an interview. I think people try and avoid. Oh, sorry. I hold my mic like an MC. Hinter. I think.
You're doing it again.
Oh, sorry. Hold it like a lady. Just going back to the question, how do you improve intimacy? So yeah, asking the right questions. And I know that a lot of people try to brand questioning like they feel interrogated or too many questions have been answered. Let's just have some fun. But I think if you're thinking about spending the rest of your life with someone, ask those questions. Those questions that are pressing on your heart, or those questions that it might feel a little bit awkward. Those are the best questions, the awkward ones. Ask those, because when you've when you've asked that level of like uncomfortable questions, it does build intimacy. Like it's just the same as nakedness. Sometimes that could be quite an awkward thing, but if you're able to be like that in front of someone, you build that intimacy, so you feel a bit closer. So yeah, ask the awkward questions, the uncomfortable ones as well. I would encourage that. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but you've asked me some really uncomfortable questions, and I'm like, wow. But then, yeah, because I was able to open up to you, I felt like closer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think you have to focus on building emotional connection and relational connection. So yes, you're having fun. Yes, you're hanging out. Yes, you're going out. But also, what are the things that we're doing that's building our relationship? Whether it's reading a book together around relationships, whether it's attending conferences, whether it's watching a video, discussing that, and building that relational intimacy. And of course, emotional intimacy is asking the questions that matter to the heart of the other person. You know, questions about their upbringing, what's important to them now, what's important to them in future. And those things help you to understand a person. And we all want to be understood. We all want to feel listened to. We all want to feel heard. And I think those kind of things help build connection.
So just on that theme then, so asking the different questions, you know, for example, someone's childhood, what if there's a reservation, they don't want to speak about that? You can sense there's a hurt there.
I think timing is important. I don't think that somebody should be telling everyone about their trauma on the first or second date. I think as you both get comfortable, trust is like deposits. I deposit some, you deposit some. We feel more comfortable depositing in each other, then it will get to a place where you're able to ask certain questions. And if that person is not ready, that's fine. They can discuss that later. I do believe that by the time they get to premarital counseling, they have to be willing and ready to discuss any and everything. But up until then, you can be patient with the person, especially if it's difficult for them, in asking such questions. Yeah.
Cool. Next question. What do you do when you like someone, but the version of themselves that they show you is not the version of themselves that they show everyone else?
It's a good question. I don't know. I wonder how you know both versions. And I would say that the version that they don't show everyone else, if that's the version of who they really are, then you want to avoid that. Because anyone can be anything to anyone at any time. They can appear to be any way. But behind closed doors is a different story. And we're testament to that. We can be here today and be preaching in front of you guys, and then it's a whole different story behind closed doors. And I believe that we should always aim for our public life to be a reflection of our personal life and our private life. And so if you know someone personally, you definitely know that this is not who they are. They act this way publicly, but privately, they're a different way. And that way is not pleasing, it's not good, it's not right, it's not godly. Then I would say you wanna avoid that person.
I was about to ask another question on top of the question. I'm one of those annoying person that answers with a question. Do they mean in terms of personality, or is it negative, positive? I don't know if the person can elaborate on that. So are they more outgoing with people, and then, or does their personality change rather than, I wouldn't say negative, positive?
Judging by the question, it would seem to me like they show a more positive, how can I put it? A positive persona to them, and then maybe to everyone else, it's different.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so.
Because I think if it's a personality thing, it's just understanding their personality, isn't it?
Indifferent.
I'm very much an introvert, and sometimes if you don't know me, it will confuse you because you'll see me up on stage, like shouting and preaching and so on and so forth, and then you'll see me in the corner, sitting by myself after service, talking very
And at
quietly
home.
and lowly
And
at
at
home.
home.
How are you? Yeah, my day was good, thanks. And you'll confuse the two. So I think if it's a personality thing, it's about understanding and knowing that person's personality, which is different from a persona, in the sense of pretending to be something they're not.
Cool. Next question. How do you keep the spark alive in your marriage?
Food.
I don't know if that question is to us personally or how do couples do it, but for us, it's definitely changed now that Esther's pregnant. That changes a lot. But that doesn't make things impossible, if you know what I'm talking about. But I would say, how do we keep it alive? Well, we try to be intentional about our date nights. We try to be intentional about sexual intimacy, and try to do all the things that we did when we first got married and all the things that we were looking forward to doing when we were getting married as well. So we kind of tried to date again. We tried to enjoy ourselves, do the things that we find fun. And yeah, I don't know if I'm missing anything.
I agree. And also, I think the bit that I didn't like about this journey in terms of sexual intimacy and stuff was the fact that sometimes we would have to plan or be very mechanical about it sometimes. So it was not always just like, woo! Sometimes it is. But I think because of life and how busy it can get, it's like, okay, meet me at 6 p.m. Yeah, see you there.
Yeah, I think there's that misconception that media gives us and Hollywood gives us that, that it's all these sparks and flames all the time. Sometimes it's like, I'm busy, you're busy, I'm tired, you're not tired, or you're tired and I'm ready to go. And there's, sometimes it's different sex drives for that week as well and how we're feeling. And sometimes you do have to be mechanical and be like Friday at 6 o'clock, and hope that, Man United are not playing. I'm joking. But I think the most important thing that we try to get a hold of is intentionality. That's the most important thing because it's very easy to let things slip through the crack. So it's always trying to remind ourselves, okay, where are we at? Have we had a date night? Have we had a check-in? And go from there.
Can I add to that as well? Also, men and women are wired very differently. So I think it's really important that, how do I say, my brain, baby brain, sorry guys. It's really important that the man, how do I explain? Say the words for me.
Give it to them in English.
I think it's really important that the man is there for the woman emotionally. I think if you're not a woman that just gives things up, there's certain things that kind of get you in the mood or get you warmed up for that. I think that's really important, and vice versa. I think the women should, I don't know, do whatever your man wants you to do.
I think. So basically, like, one of the things that we've had to understand is that women are more emotional, and so foreplay for them is a whole process. There's that saying that foreplay for a woman is like boiling a kettle. You have to let it, steam and steam and steam and so on and so forth. So sometimes Esther wants to hear the fancy words and she wants to be romanced and so on and so forth. And I have to understand that. Yes. And then there's other times where she understands, listen, we've got to leave for church in an hour. So let's do what we got to do so we can quickly shower and go to church. And so there isn't time for sermons and foreplay sermons and everything. It's let's go, So it's understanding that balance that sometimes it's going to just be like that and sometimes it's going to be, okay, let's have the romance and understanding each other in that way as well.
Yeah, that's it in English.
We sort of touched on this in terms of asking difficult questions, but there's a question here that, are there any questions you would have asked before you got married to get to know your partner better that maybe you didn't ask at the time?
Any questions I would have asked? I feel like I asked a lot of questions.
Yeah. I think Pastor Kunlé was definitely like reading his book and then coming to meet me at dates. It was a lot. It was intense. Yeah.
Questions you'd ask me?
I think I would have asked you more about your traumas. I think it's just really easy for us to look at men or women to look at men as these, strong, invincible people. But then when certain things come out, you're like, where's that from? What's that? What does that mean? And you might not get the answer straight away. Depending on the man, some men are more open than others. But this guy here, man, it takes time. So, yeah. And I think just being open to that process of being patient, like you were saying. They might not tell you straight away, and they might not be ready, but just prime them, prep them, make them comfortable enough to be able to open up. I actually forgot what the question was. I'm just going off on a tangent.
I would, I would agree with that. I feel like one of the questions I asked was, how do you deal with conflict? And I think we discussed that. But I think, and some of you heard me say before, that Esther comes from a family of women. She's got all sisters. I've got all brothers. So for Esther, apologies in her home was to her sisters, can I make you some food? Can I make you a drink? That kind of thing. For me, in my home, we talk it out. So our two homes and our two backgrounds coming together, her saying to me, do you want to can I get you a cup of tea? I'm like, what's going on? Like, we need to talk about this, and it's understanding the various different conflict styles. So I think I would have digged a little bit deeper in terms of that. And also as well, I think I would have digged a little bit deeper with Esther. I did ask her, but I would have wanted to know more how she would feel about coming into marriage, having had her mum passed, and if she felt like that would affect how she would be as a wife and a mother coming into the marriage. And that's something that we've had to look at and discuss. And I think people underestimate, how their upbringing, if they've lost a parent or they don't have a relationship with a parent, how that trauma can manifest itself in a marriage.
So is that essentially because obviously you're married now, it would have made things smoother, maybe less arguments or less conflicts?
So today...
what's the benefit, I guess?
Yeah, so when I was talking about the message that I didn't preach today, I was going to talk about unrealistic expectations. Because we go into our relationships and our marriages with unrealistic expectations, and we have a mindset that the man has certain roles and the woman has certain roles, whereas actually you should do what works best for you. And so rather than having the assumption that, the man manages the finance and the woman cooks, no. If the man is better at cooking, he might be doing the cooking. If the woman's better at finances, then she should do the finances. And I think I went in with some unrealistic expectations as to how Esther should be, but not actually thinking, hold on a second, is this something that she might not have had her mother around at that time to show her and groom her in, that I'm just dismissing, but actually it's more than that. And so it was looking into that and having those kind of discussions and not looking at other marriages and thinking, because she does that, she should do that, not knowing that our situation is different. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, next question here is, when you don't know how people will change in the future, what are the signs that you've made the right decision?
I would say, and I don't know how you feel about this, I feel like you would never be 100% sure. Because everything we do requires a level of faith, and without faith it's impossible to please God. I think right is subjective as well, because people change for better and for worse. But because you don't know how people will change in the future, you should look out for key characteristics. So I like to use the analogy that if someone told you tomorrow you're starting a new job, but the job has no job description, you don't know what company it's going to be for, you don't know any details about it, the best way you can prepare for that job is by knowing generally what skills are required for the workplace. Whether that's dealing with difficult colleagues, whether that's how to escalate things to your manager, whether it's how to deal with different personalities. Likewise, you don't know how a person may or may not change, but what you're looking for are key characteristics in terms of how they behave now that they're going to take into that marriage. So things like their morals and their values. Do they do what is right because it's right? Or do they do things to be seen to be right? Do they, like Pastor Emmanuel was talking, I think it was last week, back in the days, do they jump on the bus because they know they're not going to get caught? Or do they say, even though no one is here, I'm going to do the integral thing, right? So you're looking for someone who's always thinking about God first. Joseph said, I will not do this thing and sin against my father when it came to Potiphar's wife. So you're looking for someone who's got those character and their morals about doing what's right. You're looking for someone who has a growth mentality, someone that's always growing, that's looking to change, that's open to change because people change. And of course, first and foremost, it goes without saying, you're looking for someone that loves God. And the Bible says, by their fruits you shall know them, not by their words. So you can tell me how much scripture you want. You can tell me that you love God, but I want to see in your fruit your relationship with God. David said that his zeal for God's house consumed him. So I want to see that person's zeal for God's house, for God's kingdom, and for the things of the church. And do remember, ladies, as well, I always say that the Bible says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. If he's not in church or doesn't have a relationship with church, he can't love you as Christ loved the church. There has to be that connection and there has to be that relationship. So those are just a couple of things that I will look out for. But I'm really dying to go to the toilet. So I'm going to let Esther answer until I come back. So forgive me. Imagine this happened in a sermon. I always wonder, what happens if I need to go to the toilet in the sermon? That's when you call the praise and worship team, right? Do a song.
Yeah, come up. I'm joking. Yeah, I support everything that Pastor Kunlé said. And I think it's a case of, for me, in terms of changing in the future, I would always look at if the man, it's basically what he said, but if the man is more in love with me than God, which sounds, I think people would really like the idea of someone being in love with them than God, but I need it to be the other way around, because I need to understand that you've got the blueprint for what love is and how to lead a home and all of that. And it doesn't mean that it's not going to come with some surprises, because your spouse will surprise you later on down the line. Not with anything scandalous, hopefully not. But there's going to be some things where you're like, I didn't know that, you know. And it's just about how to navigate that. And that's why we have counselors. That's why we have therapy. That's why we have mentors and accountability partners and things like that, because whoever you married is going to change, and hopefully they do change and grow and evolve, and you evolve with them. Hopefully they're not just the same person that you met. So I think, like he said, it could be a good change, it could be a positive change, but if it's a negative change, there's also resources to help you with that. But then if it's something, I guess, I don't know, scandalous, like they have a dual identity and they're on the run and I don't know, something scandalous like that, then you can't predict that unless they've given you the red flags and you're not paying attention. That's another thing. Sometimes we ignore the red flags. We know, it's a red flag, but you kind of ignore that. So,
and I don't know what was said, but a big red flag. 1, 2, 1, 2. A big red flag is someone who tells fibs, someone who lies, just a small white lies. So when you're in and around someone and they're saying, I will never forget, I remember I was at home one day and I could hear a guy that lived in my block who played football talking outside. And he was talking to one of my neighbours and he was like, yeah, I'm currently playing for Colchester and it's going great and so on and so forth. And then that neighbour went and I came out and I said, how's it going? He's like, yeah, I'm currently, I've got trials for Barcelona and I'm going to Spain. I thought, interesting. And so when you hear people telling people different stories, that's a sign. That's a major red flag. I remember I was dating a girl several years ago. I think it was maybe 2016. And I remember she saying to me like, my best friend is getting married. And I'm like, okay, cool. So if your best friend is getting married, you're probably like, bridesmaid. She wasn't even in the bridal train. And you might think that's not a big thing, but that's antennas for me. Because I'm like, you're not even in the train. There's no reason. It's not like you're emceeing, you're doing anything else. Like, is she your best friend? Or do you see her as your best friend and she doesn't see it the same way? And if that's the case, who are your friends, So you just want to look out for little telltale signs. And I'm not saying that you have to judge someone on a whole as that, but I'm just saying, like, when those red flags are there, when you have that unsettling in your stomach, that lack of peace, there's a reason for that.
Cool. Next one. How do you discern between what is meant to be an amazing platonic connection and a romantic connection, especially in testing times? They've added that as well.
Really? So repeat that question, please.
So how do you discern between what is meant to be an amazing platonic connection and a romantic connection?
By what they say it is. If they're not telling you that they want more than a platonic relationship, then it's a platonic relationship, no matter how great the connection is. I posted something for banter the other day. I said that the way to tell that someone likes you is that they tell you. Everything else is second guessing. And so unless they literally are making their feelings and their intentions known, it is a platonic relationship, whether it's good times or bad times. I feel like until that intention has been made, it's a friendship. I don't know what you think.
And ladies, I think we're guilty of it. We make up stories. We convince ourselves sometimes that someone's interested and they're not. They just asked you questions and they told you you look nice. So, until he says something.
So it sounds to me like maybe the person's giving them the wrong signals.
Impression,
so for example, maybe they say that this is a platonic relationship, but they're acting like it's something more. Would you say to them, well, confront them?
Tell me what it is.
Yeah, or basically I would look at, am I letting any of my boundaries slip? That's making them think that they can get somewhat of the benefits of a relationship in a platonic friendship. So I would also address that as well. And just, have that guard as well, especially if I'm a lady and I'm looking for a guy, because I don't want to give the impression to other guys that I'm off the market because this guy looks like he's my guy when we're just friends. So I would be very mindful of my boundaries. If this person's giving that off and they're not following it up with their words, they're not following it up with intention, then until it's been said, then it is what it is. You can tell me as much as you want that, Pastor Kunlé, I want to give you a watch, and there's this watch that I've seen. Until I get that watch, it's just an intention. And so I think it's the same when it comes to relationships.
Cool.
I like watches, by the way.
And Q3s, right?
And Q3s.
Yeah. Next one. How do you end a relationship with someone nicely?
I think that if you're going to end a relationship with someone, I think it should be done where possible in person. Yes. I think the timing is right, has to be right as well. By that, I mean that if they've gone through let's say a bereavement or something like that, you don't want to do it in and around that. You want to make sure the timing is right. I think in person where possible, at the least on the phone. I wouldn't recommend doing it via WhatsApp or via text, just out of respect.
Voice notes, no, right?
Voice notes, no. I would recommend having a conversation and being honest and open about how you feel about where the relationship is and where you don't see it going. How I would also use that opportunity to, depending on if they get on, I would use that opportunity to thank the person for their time doing this journey with me, being patient with me if they're on good terms. Even if they're not on good terms, I would still relay that message, because at the end of the day, this is someone else's husband or wife in future. So I want to do it with grace. I want to do it with gentleness, because I don't want them to have the trauma I talked about earlier when it comes to someone else. Mm-hmm. And I want to treat others how I would like to be treated, with respect and so on and so forth. And also I would not want to, not that reputation matters, but I wouldn't want to create the wrong reputation of myself as well. So those are the things that I would say. I don't know if you would add anything.
Again, I agree. Wow, I really agree with you today for once.
For once.
No, I agree. And I don't know, when you said that, it just reminded me of when we went out on Friday and what my dad was saying about just being on good terms with people and how important that is. Because for me, I like to defend my parents. I'm going off on a tangent. And he's just like, calm down. It's just good to be on good terms with people. You never know when your last day on earth is going to be. You never know who they know. This world is small. And, you know, you bump into your exes. We've bumped into each other's exes. It's been cool. It's been fine. Hey, girl. No, it's been pleasant. And that's because of how he's ended it. Vice versa. It's been fine. It's just chilled. So bear that in mind as well, because you will bump into them probably.
Yeah.
And you don't want it to be awkward. And most importantly, salvation. If you want to make it to heaven, if you don't want to build any bitterness amongst the other person, then do it kindly. Yeah.
Cool. Next one. When you're dealing with broken family relationships, how can you be a peacemaker or part of that for your family when members still have harmful behavior?
It's a good question. And so my theory is that you can't change people. People can only change themselves. I think one of the biggest things that we underestimate when it comes to the dynamics of such relationships is the power of prayer. And because you can't change a person, all you can do is put that person's heart before God. And if I was in that situation, I would be taking time out to pray and fast regularly. I would be taking time out to pray for peace in the household. I would also ask for God to give me the words to say when I'm speaking to people. But ultimately, I wouldn't try to do something that only God can do in the hearts of man. Mm-hmm. And so that I would therefore take it to God. I think if someone's behavior is still harmful, we put ourselves at risk of being on the back end of further harm. And I think one ought to pray that the hearts of those people change. And part of the hearts changing will lead to opportunities where they will be more open to hearing some of the things that you want to say to them and some of the things you want to share with them. But I think a lot of times people go into such things too blindly without covering it in prayer. And that's so important.
So if someone's dating someone that has come from a broken family and has those relationships either with their parents or siblings, but they're originally not willing to deal with it, the issues, how long should they wait before, at what point should they say, I've tried, I've got to let it go, or you understand what I mean?
I think the Bible says pursue peace with all men. I think as much as we have the opportunity to do, and no one's safety is compromised, we should try. We should get to the point where we are able to say we've done all we could. Sometimes it works out that that person doesn't have a relationship with their family. But if I was dating that person, I'd be looking at who they do have a relationship with. Are there other aunts, uncles, role model figures in their life that make up their family unit that we can call on, that they can lean out to? But again, I would still encourage that person to never give up on family, because God is a God of suddenly and anything can change. But I also would say, on the flip side of that when the two become one, you are now family. And that's the priority as well. So you can't allow the others to get in the middle of that as well.
Yeah, I agree. And also in terms of being the peacemaker, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, I would use that loosely. It's great to be the peacemaker. I think I'm the peacemaker in my family. But I think there's also boundaries, especially if it's weighing on your mental health. There's no point, not that there's no point, but there's no point actually if you end up sicker mentally or just worse off mentally in order to create peace. That's not peace. So if Kunle was to see that happening to me in marriage, he would obviously tell me, okay, this is your boundary. But if you aren't married, if you're not with someone, then you need to be able to give yourself that healthy boundary as well. I think when it comes to family, because they're so familiar, we don't put boundaries in place. You need to put boundaries in place. Especially our culture, I don't know, there just doesn't seem to be boundaries, but put that boundary in place. Yeah.
Yeah, and because we are now one and our family is priority, there might be times where I say to Esther, no, we're not doing this. And that might involve her sister and it might involve her family, but I'm putting that boundary in place to guard us.
Yeah.
And that's also very important as well. You've got to realize that if you're not ready to leave and cleave, you're not ready to become one. Because your spouse now becomes your priority. and things have to shift. And it helps when you have parents that understand that. Many of you know that my mother comes to this church. There was a time when I would drop my mother home after church, she'll be sitting in the front seat. When I got married, she understood that she's sitting in the back seat. She wants her to still sit at the front. But as a man, I am showing that this is my priority. It's not that I don't love my mum, but if you're not willing to tell your mum or your dad, no, that's the limit to where your input goes, or no, we're not doing that, then you're going to have, you are having trouble leaving and cleaving. Yeah. And you have to be ready to leave and cleave, as difficult as it is when you get married, because your spouse and your family now becomes the priority.
Okay, so on that theme of, I call it taking executive decisions. For the family, right? So there's a question here about, can you speak about husbands being a leader at home, particularly decision making, and examples of God told me or told us we should do this, but crucially, what happens when the wife disagrees?
Well, you've been married 10 years. You make executive decisions. What do you do, Felix? You weren't ready for that, would you?
No, I wasn't ready for it.
I think, obviously, we know the Bible says, can two walk together unless they agreed? Being the head of the home isn't about, you correct me if I'm wrong, not democracy, what's the other one? Dictatorship? No. Like someone that's just like this way.
Tyranny.
Maybe a dictatorship, yeah, somewhere it's like, this is it, and this is how we're doing it. And so, no, it's more like we are one, but I value your input. And I don't just say, you know what, I'm going to do this because I want to do it, but actually what is best for us. And in terms of, I'm all against, I don't believe people should use God told me as a way to get their way. I have more respect for you if you just say, I want to do this, rather than try to cloud it up in God. But I think there might be some decisions in the household that one has to make. And I think that's where submission for the woman might be a little bit challenging. Submission is two words, sub and mission, mission, sub, to come under that mission. But the two are one. And so every decision that a man's making should be making for the best of the household and not for their personal preference. I don't think we've had to come across any such decisions till date.
Still don't have a name, though, for this child.
Still don't have a name yet. But again, that wouldn't be something where it's like, this is it. And, we're going to stick. It will be, a discussion thing. It's just that the leadership lies with me. And I would just add to that as well. I remember speaking to a friend of mine. We were in Edinburgh. There was 3 of us. And I was just like, leading in marriage is hard. And I was like, sometimes I get tired of leading. And he was like, you can never get tired of leading. You can never get tired of leading. Because leading means that even though I may feel like I have been done wrong, I'm the one to say, let's sit down and talk about this. I'm the one to say, we need to plan this, we need to do this. And I think when it comes to leading and, leading the household, I think that one has to, how would I put this? For better words, one has to really be ready for the consequences of every decision that they make and the effect that it can have on the household.
I'm really glad I'm not the leader.
So, yeah. Because you're making decisions about everything, whether it's family, whether it's finances, whether it's this, it's that. And I might be going off question a bit, but I always say, I don't know how people do marriage without God. Because it's hard enough with God, let alone without God. And so part of that leadership is your ability to pray when you don't feel like praying. And to try and keep the peace in the household when you don't feel like it. It's got nothing to do with feelings whatsoever, but just doing what is right by the standards of the word.
Cool.
Yeah. Sorry if that didn't answer your question. That's the best I could do.
Any tips on how to not let negative experiences impact your desire and search for partnership?
Yeah, heal. You need to go through therapy. You need to speak to friends and family. You need to get to a point where your future is not what's the word I'm looking for? Tainted by your past. That it's not made to pay for your past experiences. And so in terms of not letting your future, just looking at the question again, where is it? Negative experiences impact your desire and search for partnership. If you still feel like the past is in the present, then perhaps you're not ready. And you need to get to a place where you can acknowledge your past, but it doesn't hurt you or damage you like it did before. And it won't be a hindrance to where you're going. And actually, that's another sign that someone isn't ready when they're on a date with you and all they talk about is their ex and how their ex did this and I was in a relationship and they did that. Yeah, that's what I would say to that.
I think that might be a part of the for some people, not part of the healing process, but they just need to get it all out. And then I was just thinking, when you said that, I was thinking about when I had a breakup and I asked my friend, because he was a guy, I was like, how do I go about this? Like, I feel like I'm dying. And he literally just said, look at the bigger picture. And I was really offended by that answer until I thought about it. And I was just thinking about, this is why it's so important to have that relationship with God as well. If you have the big picture thinking and what God has for you, and you're already certain and confident in that, and confident in what God has for you, not just in a spouse, just life. That is so comforting. That was like my ultimate comfort, just knowing that God has my back. I think that really helped me. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add as well, in addition to what you guys said, I think it's important for everybody to go through some level of counseling. Now, you might, obviously, clearly, if you know that you've experienced any trauma in your life, it's good to do it. But also, if you haven't, it will help you to be a better version of yourself. So, I mean, the NHS has great services. You know, PK runs a charity called the Empowerment Group that also offer counselling for specifically aimed at Black people. So I would just encourage everyone to do it, especially single people.
And I would just add as well, on top of that oftentimes the trauma that we experienced is what the enemy wants to use to block us for what is for us. So you always need to be mindful of how is the enemy trying to infiltrate what actually might be good for me by using my previous trauma and my past, because the enemy has a funny way of bringing up your past randomly when you're not expecting it, when you encounter a thing, and you need to be spiritually aware of how he tries to use that to affect your future going forward.
Cool. We've got just over 10 minutes, so probably try and speed through some of these. Cool. if it's possible. Next one is, how do I pressure a guy about marriage without pressuring him? LOL.
For me, you can't pressure a guy into getting married, because when you get married and if things go wrong, he's going to say, well, I did it because you pressured me. So, but what you can do is sit them down and say, well, where is this going? You know, if you're thinking about marriage, I'm guessing that you've been courting and maybe courting for a while. And I think there's nothing wrong if you're in a relationship and it's been a while to sit down and say, look, this is how far we've come. Where is this going? And it might be that that person has reasons as to why they haven't proposed, why they haven't wanted to take the next step, that they haven't had the opportunity to discuss until you've sat down with them and engaged them on that level. So I would say that rather than pressuring, I would have that conversation. I also think it's a good reason as well why, when you're dating, you should have conversations about how long ideally you'd like to court for before you get married. That was something that we discussed when we were on our dates. And I remember asking Esther, how long, what's the least and minimum amount of time you'd like to court for, and what's the longest you'd like to court for? And we both were in the same period that we said, okay, we didn't want to do anything less than a year, but we didn't want to do anything more than 3 years. And we were together for 2 years before we got married, or a year and a half or 2 years before we got married. I think it's important to have that conversation beforehand as well. But that's what I would say to that.
Cool. Anything to add?
Also, don't put pressure on yourself as well. I think, yes, ask the question, but don't don't be shaking in your boots about it as well. You know, if that person is for you, they're for you. If they're not, yeah.
All right, cool. What is the best way to approach seeking slash dealing with shame in a relationship? Sorry. What is the best way to approach seeking accountability slash dealing with shame in a relationship if you're naturally a private person?
I think there's something liberating about being set free from shame when you are able to confide in someone else. When you're able to confide in someone else about what you are feeling and what you have dealt with or what you're dealing with, the enemy can't use it against you. That's why the Bible says that we should confess our sins to one another and not just God, because there's freedom in confessing our sins to one another. If someone is struggling with accountability, what I would say to them is do everything you can where possible to step out of your comfort zone, because you're going to need to be more open, especially when you get married. Whether it's with a mentor, whether it's with a leader, whether it's with a brother, whether it's a friend, you don't want to suffer alone. Accountability all throughout the Bible has always been a good thing. And as I said earlier in service, the Bible tells us that a man that isolates himself rages against all wise judgment. Mm-hmm. The Bible says in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. So having a community around you of people that you can confide in is so, so important for dealing with shame, dealing with struggle. I use the example of being in Scotland and saying to my friends that were there, I'm tired of leading. If I didn't have that community or have that circle, I'll be bottling up things on the inside. So I would just encourage the person to not allow the enemy to use their shame to stop them from stepping out and getting the freedom and the help and the support that they need, because it will set you free.
The enemy loves secrets, and he loves to keep people bound by their secrets. And when you have that secret of shame or whatever, like there's certain things we've shared with each other, there's certain things I've shared with loads of you guys here, which is, it's just been so liberating. If we didn't have our mentors, I always say it to you guys, if we didn't have our mentors, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. And I just thank God for that, because I wasn't open to having a mentor like that, because I had trust issues anyway with people. And it was something that he kept on banging on about, having that mentorship, that accountability. I believed in it in theory, but who could I trust? So actively find people, be proactive in finding the trustworthy people that you can confide in. You need it. It's a must. It's a must. Yeah, that's what I'll say.
And I'll just quickly add, I know you wanted to speed through them, but I'm just looking at the question and it says if you're naturally a private person. Don't confuse being private with being secret. Because you can be a private, there's a difference between being a private person and being a secret person. I'm a private person doesn't mean I'm a secret person. A private person means I'm not going to announce my business to you, but if you ask me, I'm not necessarily going to hide it from you. And so the person asking the question has got to ask themselves, am I a private person or am I a secret person? Because there's a difference between the two.
Cool. Any tips on navigating a relationship when there is friction with their friends or family?
I would quickly say, going back to what I was saying earlier, that if you know there's friction with their family, you both have to be strong in the decision that you're making. You have to know that this is what's right for you, because it will be you two. I use the term, I hope you understand what I mean. I don't mean it literally, but it'll be you two against the world. So you need to be strong enough knowing that this is what God wants for me. This is where we're going, because even the family don't see it and others don't see it. I know this is right. In addition to that, I still believe that even if you have friction with their friends and family, there should be part of their community that you do get on with, that you're willing to build relationships with and friendships with. So if their parents are not tolerating, if their parents are not open to you just yet, again, you want to continue to pray for that, but also you want to try, do they have any father figures, any uncles, any aunts, any other people that you can speak to? I would not continue that relationship blindly, and I definitely would not propose without some form of community in their life being aware and giving me that kind of approval.
Cool. I know the answer to this one, but I just want you to explain why it's not best. Is it okay to live together with the intention to get married?
Intention is just intention. Intention does not mean we are going to get married. It's I have an intention to marry you. And so I would never advise someone to live together with someone before they get married, whether they have the intention to get married or not. I just think cohabiting, the Bible says, flee all appearance of sexual immorality. And so if you really like each other, then you're going to be tempted at some point along that journey of living together. Don't tell me, oh no, I won't, we'll have separate rooms, so on and so forth. If you really are attracted to that person, you will be tempted and you will have those moments. Not to mention that even the world knows now, so scripture aside, that couples who cohabit actually have a higher chance of separating and getting divorced when they get married. One of the things that my spiritual father said to us when we were doing relationship counseling was, if you honor God in your courtship, he will honor you in your marriage. And I think if you flee all appearance of evil, if you do things the right way, one, you have a testimony. Two, I believe that God honors that. And so you wouldn't want to put yourself in any situation where there is temptation or that challenge, when rather, there's the opportunity to just do it right.
And if the marriage is and if you plan to be married and marriage is till death do us part, you have forever.
Yeah.
You have forever to spend. So why is there the rush to live together?
Yeah.
Once you get married, you're not going to place, what do they call it? House swapping. You're not going to be swapping with any other spouse. It's going to be you two and your family and the rest of your family. So you have forever to go. So yeah, no pressure. No pressure.
All right, question for you, Esther. As I can tell, this is from a lady. So, I'm yet to meet a man who desires to abstain until marriage. Therefore, I find it tricky being open when dating because I keep finding those males. Advice.
Yeah, I know how that feels. Advice: there are men that are willing to abstain. Remember, it's not just the people that you've met. However, percentage, the numbers are probably really low of the men that want to abstain, just because it's the world. And what was the other part of the question? Therefore, I find it tricky dating because I wouldn't be discouraged though. Don't be discouraged. There are men that do want to abstain. It's just about finding the right guy. So I've met women who have I've had to cut it off because he just wouldn't listen. He doesn't understand that this is where I stand. Now, if it's not a man, like I said earlier in the previous question, if this man does not love God more than me, then we got a problem. We've got a big problem. Looking at our experience, it wasn't even easy. And we believe that. We believe that. So it wasn't an easy journey. I'm not saying it's easy, just abstain. But we thank God that we did. But it's a journey. And you have to have people in your life that you're willing to express that to as well. But yeah, I would say there are men that are out there that love the Lord, that have that in their heart, to abstain till marriage. I sound like I'm crying out my breath. Oh, this baby.
Yeah, and I would just, sorry, go on. I would just add, again, like we said earlier, look internally as to why you keep attracting those type of men. Because sometimes, and I'm not saying that the person that asked the question does this, but some women will be like, why do I keep attracting certain men? But then they're always wearing short skirts, they're always wearing revealing clothes, and they're complaining about the type of people they attract. So you have to look internally, first of all, and secondly, change where you're looking. Change where you're looking. That's why I said earlier about it's by their fruits that you should know them. If somebody really loves God, they're in the house of God, they're accountable, they're serving, the chances are they probably are going to believe in abstaining. So don't compromise, change where you're looking, don't give up, because they do exist.
Yeah, I was laughing because I was thinking about that at the back of my head in terms of how you present yourself as well. Especially if you're on an app. What pictures are you uploading? You will definitely attract how you are presenting yourself. It's not fair. I know that's the world we live in. We're very visual. Men are very visual. If you give them a little hint of something, they would assume they might be wrong, but make the wrong assumption. And it's but I'm not really like that. That's not who I am. But he has every right to assume that. So let's just, use wisdom as well. And I'm not saying that we should go around dressing like nuns, but let's use wisdom as well. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
Cool. How do you move forward in a long-term relationship if your partner has hurt you twice, but they are working on themselves and have taken accountability?
What's hurt?
Yeah, it's a tough one because we don't know to what degree the hurt has been caused. I think there's a difference between hurt from conflict and hurt from infidelity, for example. So it's very difficult. But I think that I always say that the best decision you can make is from a non-emotional place, from a logical place. So if you can be on the outside of something, if you can, this is why it's always good to have accountability as well, because they can see the blind spots. They can see things that you can't see because you're in it. And when they're not in it, they can see it from outside. When you're in it, I always say to people, when you like someone, you think that God is saying yes to every prayer that you say. So having that outside point of view always helps. But I think where you can, it's about beginning that journey again, in patience, observing from a distance whether you feel like this person has truly changed or not. But if they are working on being accountable and they are putting those steps in place, then they are serious about making that change.
Would you encourage, for example, like some sort of break for a time where both can heal and to see if I still like that person and want to move forward?
Absolutely. I think that could be a possibility as well. Just to kind of get an external view of what you're in. A friend of mine, Dr. Robbie Sonderegger, he said something to me years ago. He said the best gift you can give yourself when you're dating is emotional control. And I never forgot that. And so I was very logical and methodical about when we were dating in terms of how long I spent on the phone with her, how often we saw each other, because I didn't want it to go too fast that, again, I feel like God is saying yes to every prayer. And I think if people can give themselves the ability to look at what they're in from a kind of bird's eye view, from an external view, and just kind of be patient and walk the journey in that regard, then it would make a big difference. But it's quite a difficult one.
Okay, run out of time. There's one last question I saw that I wanted to get you guys to answer. Where is it? So, how do you balance being content in your singleness but yet desiring for marriage? I feel like my contentment doesn't bring anyone who's interested in me.
I feel like if your contentment doesn't bring anyone who's interested in you, I think you have to be careful about how you portray your contentment to others. So if you are the type of person who's always talking about, I don't know, I don't need a man, or I'm just going to do me or whatever, you're giving off that vibe, that can be unattractive. But I feel like you can enjoy your life while still acknowledging that you want companionship, while still speaking to friends and family and saying, look, if you know anyone, I'm looking. I'm interested. If you know anyone, like, I feel like you can still enjoy your life while still being open to companionship. And I wouldn't see any status higher than another, in a sense of don't feel like, oh, because you're single, you're less than a married person. If you're married, you're better than a single person. Enjoy where you are now. Because people told us, and you've probably heard it before, enjoy your singleness before you get married. We were like, yeah. It's all right for you to say that because you're going home to a spouse. Enjoy your singleness before you get married. Because there's going to be moments in marriage, there might be moments in marriage where you wish that you enjoyed your singleness more. Because it's a different level now of accountability to your partner and God. So I would say enjoy where you're at, but still be open both in your attitude, in the way you speak, to being open to connecting with people and letting people know that, you are looking for companionship.
Yeah. And I think where you are in terms of like the words you utter, they're so powerful. They're so powerful. Like when I was praying with someone a few weeks ago, they were saying that they had given up and then just put it on the back burner. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably why, because you've given up. Not that you're content, but you've written it off. So already spiritually, you've already put like a barrier there. Before I met him, I started a platform called Transit to 30. And it was about my contentment in being single, but also talking about when I do find him, this is what I want, or this is the journey, it's frustrating. Oh, today I feel like very lonely, or today I'm quite happy. And these are the plans I'm going to have for this single life that I'm going on. And then he appears like a month later. Yeah, so it was just funny how that happened. And I remember at the event that he wasn't at but found out about me, someone in the audience, I think he was asking because he was interested in me, but he was asking what my type was, age, all of these things. And it described him. It was really weird. And then like a couple of weeks later, he turns up. And kind of ruined that whole single journey, to be honest.
So very last question to piggy off that. You mentioned what you want. Now, we all know, unfortunately, sometimes it's aimed at the ladies. Shopping lists are quite long and ridiculous. So what advice would you have for someone who might be struggling to find someone, but their I don't know, requirements are quite out there?
I personally don't think there's anything wrong with a list because it's part of the vision. We're writing it plain and clear. However, we might not always be spot on about that list, if that makes sense. So no, there's no rules anywhere that says if he doesn't meet 100% of that list, he's not the one. I don't know where we got that from. But my list, it was like everything was ticked. So I'm quite happy. I always say I'm going to bring that list to you.
I know. I've never seen the list.
I've not been able to get it out of the storage. Anyway, but yeah, I think you can write a list, but I don't think you should be so attached to that list because it might change. And I think it's so funny how God works as well. You know, they say, oh, we make our plans and God laughs. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the list. And I think also when we pray to God, hopefully we're hoping to have that dialogue rather than, God, this is what I want, this is what I want. God should be also responding to you and saying...
Directing that list.
Yeah, that part about he needs to have this car, scrap that. Yeah, keep speaking to God, having that dialogue about that. I always said I didn't want a pastor, actually, and I got a pastor. So it was... You seem really proud of yourself.
I'm proud of myself. I'll just quickly add as well that if you ask God for money, he gives you a job.
Yeah.
So you got to work that job for that money.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we have lists and there's no problem with that. But oftentimes I find that God gives us the raw ingredients. We're looking for the cake, but he's giving you the egg and the flour and the butter. And you have to basically look at your list and have people look at your list with you and help you determine whether it's realistic, whether it's not realistic. And like Esther said, you have to be willing to say, well, I might have these 5, but I don't have these 2, because no one is going to tick all 10 boxes. And whatever you wish for on that list, there's always going to be other people who do and don't have that. So you have to learn to know that, okay, these are the things I'm content with. These are the things that they don't have that I'm happy to live without and be able to work on that basis with that list as well. I would just say as well very quickly that I might be going off tangent a bit, but I spoke to two ladies this week, and they don't attend our church, but one of them was telling me about how she's looking for someone and she can't find any good men out there and so on and so forth. And there was this event going on, singles event, that she could go to. I was like, why don't you go to this event? She said, no, I've been there once and it wasn't my vibe. And I said, one time? And it wasn't your vibe? And they're like, yeah. But okay, cool. Spoke to someone else. They were like, oh, there's no guys out there, can't find anyone, so on and so forth. I'm like, okay. So if I come across someone, are you open to being hooked up? Nah, I just prefer to just meet. Okay. These are the limiting things that people do to stop their opportunities. We have the right to pray to God about certain things. We don't have the right to dictate to God how he answers those things. So yes, if you can pray to God, I want a man, I want a woman, let him dictate how that comes, whether it's through a dating app, whether it's someone in church, whether it's a friend's friend. Our job is to be open to what God has for us.
Cool. All right, guys, let's give a round of applause for Pastor Kunlé and Esther.
Maybe the rest of the questions that we didn't get through, maybe we'll do it again sometime. Maybe we'll do like an Instagram live or something like that and try to get through some of the questions as well. We'll let you know. Maybe start a podcast. Who knows?
All right, guys. Thank you very much. That brings to the end the Q&A session.